the dark side of positive affirmations and how they're actually holding you back. So I remember in my master's counseling program over at Clemson University, I remember sitting in my class and they're teaching us about all the different theories that we can use to help our clients to achieve their goals. And what I want you guys to think of these theories as, I want you to think of these theories as different roadmaps, different guides that any therapist, any client could take in order to get to their goal, if you will. Now, for me and most therapists, they tend to choose the one theory called cognitive behavioral therapy, so better known as CBT. So the way CBT works is that you'll help clients to change their thoughts so that you can help them to change their feelings and then hopefully change their behaviors or their actions. And when you do those three things, we hope that we're able to see them accomplish the goals that they've been trying to accomplish by first starting with their mind, right? Starting with their thoughts. And one of the golden techniques to use for this theory is affirmations. Now, what is affirmations? So affirmations are the positive statements that we say about ourselves that we want to be true. It's the things that we like to affirm that we believe, that we want to say that is true without a doubt. So things like we are beautiful, we are worthy, we are intelligent, all these different things, right? This is what these positive affirmations are like. So I remember learning this skill and thought, wow, this is really neat. Let me use this once I get ready to work with my clients and things like that. So I remember one day I was sitting in a counseling session and I had a client who was struggling with their self-esteem, and they're struggling with this because they were overweight. And what I would tell them is that when they look at themselves in the mirror and they have all those negative thoughts going through their mind, to simply think positive. I would tell them, hey, next time you're thinking you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're overweight, just simply say, I am good enough. And I remember as I told them that piece of advice, they kind of looked at me a little funny. They looked at me a little strange, almost like a face of disgust, like, oh my gosh, it's not like I haven't heard that one before. Like they looked at me as if they've heard this advice before and they knew it didn't work. And as a result, I never saw that client again after that. And the reason why is because when you tell someone to simply think positive, it kind of, and I won't even say kind of, it definitely dismisses some of the things that they're feeling. It's almost as if we're telling them, hey, just get over it. You'll be okay. And this is what toxic positivity looks like. And this is what I'm going to start talking about in this podcast, right? All the things that get in the way when we try to use positive affirmations, the backlash that we get, how it actually can harm you rather than help you. So before I go into point number one, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so that you can get more transformational information like this, absolutely free from a licensed therapist. So with that being said, let's get to point number one. So the first reason why I want to tell you that positive affirmations can actually harm you is because positive affirmations can be very dismissive to the actual problems that you're going through. So I'd love to tell you guys how me and my wife, we sometimes deal with our son. Sometimes, he could be in his crib crying, fussing, and all this other stuff. And unfortunately, sometimes, we're right in the middle of something, right? Whether it's fixing his bottles, fixing his bath, getting his clothes together, right? Like it's so many things. Or sometimes, we're just sleeping, right? So during this time when we can't actually get to him, what we do is we give him his binky, right? We give him his pacifier to help buy us some time. And what that would do is it would buy us maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. When he was younger, it would buy us actually 30 minutes, which was really, really great. But the thing was that it never got to the root as to why he was crying. Because at that time, maybe he was sleepy, maybe he was hungry, maybe he needed a diaper change. But whatever it wasn't the binky that was going to solve it. We actually need to address the problem head on. And this is what it means to pacify someone, right? You just kind of make them feel better, try to get them to shut up and be quiet. And that's what positive affirmations can be like. Positive affirmations can be hurtful because it simply dismisses what that person is actually going through. When someone tells you to just think about it, right? Or just to think positive, or don't worry about it, you'll be fine. I want you guys to really think what it is that you're saying. Think about what it is that you're saying to yourself. You're really communicating, hey, be quiet. We don't have time for this anymore, right? We don't have time for this right now. And that can be very, very hurtful for someone who's really, really going through something that's really tough. Think about it like this. It's kind of like when someone, unfortunately, loses someone. So you go to a funeral and then they have the repast. So, you're having dinner or lunch and you're talking to the family, you're meeting up with everybody, right? So you're just kind of celebrating this person. And let's say you come up to the person who's grieving and they're telling you how much they miss their loved one. They're telling you how much it hurts them. And you look at them and you simply say, hey, you'll get over it. Like, think about what you're saying to them, right? You tell them, hey, it's not that big of a deal. You'll be fine. And that could be very, very hurtful to the point where it does more damage than good, which was not not the intent of the person who said, hey, don't worry about it, right? It's kind of like also when someone goes through a breakup and one of your friends tells you, hey, time heals everything, or they weren't right for you anyway, or you're so much better than them. It sounds good on the surface, but it fails to address the pain that person is actually going through, the deep, deep pain and the deep suffering that person is experiencing at that moment. And that is where positive affirmations can be harmful. It can be very, very dismissive. So what I want you guys to do is actually allow these painful things, these feelings, these experiences, allow them to be there. And rather than trying to tell someone a positive affirmation, or even trying to tell yourself a positive affirmation, what I would love for you to do is actually to acknowledge the pain that you see on the surface. I want you to actually show empathy for what it is that they're going through. Show empathy for what it is that you're actually going through. Because here's the thing, uncomfortable feelings, right? They're not necessarily bad. They have their place. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a client literally yesterday, and I was telling them, your uncomfortable feelings, so all that pain, that depression, that anxiety, all that stuff is communicating something to you. It's communicating that there's something that you value and there's something that you need to address so that you can access this value. But we can't do that. We can't realize this unless we really stop and look at what is this pain that we're feeling? What is it that we're experiencing? And what we don't want to do is use positive affirmations to dismiss that pain. So again, point number one as to why positive affirmations are actually harmful is because they can be very dismissive for what you're going through, and it does not address the actual pain that you're going through. Point number two as to why positive affirmations can actually be harmful and how they're actually keeping you stuck is because positive affirmations, they create this idea that positivity is the only thing that's acceptable. And that is totally a myth. And actually, that is what I see keep people stuck more often than not. I'll tell you what I mean by that. What I see a lot of times is people believe that they have to have positive thoughts in order for positive things to happen in their life, for good things to happen in their life. Well, the question then becomes, what if there's nothing positive going upstairs in your mind, right? What if you're sitting there saying, I am beautiful, I am intelligent, I am strong, but you're not able to believe it? Are you supposed to stay stuck? Are you supposed to not do anything? Are you supposed to just curl up into a ball and just die, right? Just die in your negative thoughts and just kind of sit there and kind of have this woe is me type of life or thought process behind who you are? No, you're not supposed to have that. Guys, negative thoughts can actually be helpful for your life. I'll tell you what I mean by that. So there have been times where I've had performances in track and basketball, right? So back in high school, even as an entrepreneur, whether it's in a session or even when I'm doing a webinar, there have been times that I looked at my performance and said, yo, I could have done a lot better. And I'm not saying that from a place of not being good enough. I'm saying that from a place of wanting to simply get better. When you start to attach who you are to your outcomes, that is where you start to fail. When you can look at your goals, when you can start to look at where you want to be from the standpoint of already being good enough, and it more so being about your curiosity of how much better you can become, this is when chasing your goals doesn't have this dark side to it as well. Because I've seen for a lot of people, they chase goals as a way to try to make themselves seem good enough, to make themselves feel better about who they are. But there is no goal that you can accomplish that will make you feel better about who you are. Right? Like who you are, your identity, that is something that you develop on your own. This is something that comes from your values. This is something that is inherently inside of you. It is not something that you have to go and prove or obtain through some outside materialistic thing. Because what happens when that materialistic thing is taken away from you? Is also your self-worth taken away from you? That's why you want to be really, really careful about that. And again, going back to the main point, negative thoughts can actually be very helpful. Uncomfortable feelings for you can be very, very helpful. But if we live in a world where only positivity is allowed, I'm sorry to say, but it's going to be very tough for that person to find fulfillment and find happiness in a world that is unfortunately, or rather fortunately, imperfect. Because I live in an imperfect world, it allows me to be imperfect. Now that I'm allowing myself to be imperfect, guess what I can do? I can live more freer. I can move from point A to point B a lot quicker because I'm not trying to be perfect, right? You see where I'm coming from with this? Perfect or positivity, however you want to put it, it sounds great on the surface, but underneath that is a lot of suffering that's going on because we're trying to maintain something that is unsustainable. So again, the second reason why positive affirmation is holding you back is because it creates this idea, this concept that positivity is the only thing that's acceptable, when actually life is made of positive things and let's just say negative things, right? Like both of those things come together and it creates a life worth living, and I'll even add this last piece before I go to the next point. 50 Cent, he's a famous rapper. He once said in a song, you wouldn't know what sunshine looked like if it wasn't for rain. And that is what we're trying to get at. You wouldn't know what positivity, or you wouldn't even be able to value positivity are the good times, if you didn't know what struggle felt like, if you didn't know what tough times felt like. Therefore, these things are needed in order to create this balance in our world. So we don't want to try to force an all positive type of way of living or all perfect way of living, because again, that is unsustainable. And main point number 3, and before I get into it, again, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because if you made it this far throughout this show, it tells me that you really, really appreciate the things that I'm saying. So with that being said, main point number 3 as to why positive affirmations is actually harmful and how it's holding you back is that positive affirmations can ironically remind you of all the negative beliefs you have about yourself. Now, I know that sounds crazy, right? But I'm willing to bet that some of you have experienced this. So what tends to happen is we tend to have these negative thoughts come into our mind. And then when we try to force a positive affirmation such as, I am slim enough, I am smart enough, I am good enough, I am this, and that enough, what happens is that the mind starts to speak up and say, no, you're not. Don't you remember this time and that time and that time? And what happens is your mind starts to point out all the reasons why you are not these positive affirmations that you just mentioned. You know, us as humans, we love to be authentic, and also we love to be right. We love to be the person that we think that we are. So whenever there's an imbalance, whenever there's a contradiction, that right there is very hard for us as humans to sit with. So if I'm telling myself that I am good enough, right? Or let's say I am smart enough, but yet I've been failing my tests, failing my quizzes, failing my certifications, right? And I'm just really, really going through it. I can feel like I'm lying to myself, right? I can feel like, man, I'm just making something up to make me feel better, to help me sleep better at night. And what that would do is it actually would remind me every time that I say that I am smart enough, it will remind me that I'm actually not. So what I'm trying to show you guys is that negative things, if you're not careful, can have a relation to positive things, right? And then vice versa. So when it comes to using positive affirmations, what is better for you to do is actually start with an affirmation that you feel is believable for where you're at. So if there's a person that is, let's say, overweight, right? I'll just use this one. And if a person were to use a positive affirmation such as, you know, I am good enough, which they are, right? Being overweight doesn't make you not good enough. But let's say it's hard for that person to believe it. What I would tell them to believe is that they're trying their best to make their life better. They're trying really hard to show themselves that they are worthy, right? Like these are the things that we want to believe rather than trying to force a positive affirmation because we heard some guru on social media or Instagram say this, right? I'll use even another one. Let's use intelligence. All right, sorry, I got cut off. So we're going to pick up with intelligence. So let's take intelligence with this next example. So if I had someone that was seeing me for therapy, and let's say they were nervous because they just failed their test to get into law school or medical school or to even become a licensed therapist. Let's say they've just failed that test and it's their third time taking it. I wouldn't tell them to go in and use the affirmation next time, you know, I'm smart enough and all this other stuff, because that may be hard for them to believe. I would rather have them pick another positive affirmation, or rather just another belief to use, to focus on, to get them to that level, right? To get them to the point where they're able to take that test. One of those things would be something like, I have the ability to get ready for this test. I am able to work hard to take and pass this test, right? Like I want to take something that's more so based on who they are, their abilities, rather than some outcome, right? Like I don't want them to think that, okay, I have to believe that I'm smart in order to go and pass this test. No, I need them to believe that they can actually work hard to prepare and study so that they can actually go and pass the test, right? Because that may be something that's a little bit more believable for them at this time. I love to equate this to going to the gym. If you've gone to the gym, and let's say you've never been, but this is your first time, and let's say I put, 200 pounds on the bar for you to bench press, that may be kind of tough. And even if you were able to do it, it may be tough for you to, let's say, do 3 sets of 10, if you will, right? That's normally what I do. But if it's your first time, maybe I should put 125 pounds on the bar and have you bench press that maybe a few times, right? Just to kind of get warmed up. Because if we put too much weight on the bar, you may not be able to lift it, but if you are able to lift it, you may hurt yourself, right? And that really, really could happen. Affirmations are the same way. We want to build ourselves up to that. And if we just go out with, 200 pounds on the bar, never lifted before. So going with the affirmation that, I am smart enough, right? Or I am beautiful, or I am slim enough, or I am this and that. And it's something that you can't personally believe, then I may be setting you up for failure. You may be setting yourself up for failure. So again, positive affirmations can actually bring up more negative thoughts and do more harm than good. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up with a conclusion. I'm going to give you guys the 3 main reasons why positive affirmations can actually hold you back and why they can actually do more damage than good. And the first one that I went over was that positive affirmations can harm you because they can actually be very dismissive of what you're actually going through. The second point that I made is that positive affirmations can harm you because you're creating the belief that only positive thoughts is acceptable, that only perfection is acceptable in a world that is imperfect. And then with the last point that I just made, point number 3, positive affirmations, it can actually ironically remind you of all the negative stuff that you've gone through, all the negative beliefs that you have about yourself. And it's just simply because the mind, it will fight you on this belief that you're trying to force. It would actually show you all the reasons why you actually are not smart enough, not good enough, not slim enough, not this, and that enough. And that is going to give you a whole lot of baggage to carry that you do not have to carry at this moment. Again, start with the affirmation. Start with the belief that is believable and then build your way up from there. So this is Coach Wells. I'm a licensed therapist, and thank you for checking out this episode.